to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn and Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. You know that I love talking to successful business owners at every level of business, right? Every story has lessons to offer. Everybody has mistakes that they have learned from. And wherever you are in business, you're probably a couple of steps ahead of someone who needs to hear what you have to say. But sometimes I also like to take a step back and talk collectively about what successful business owners do. That's what today's conversation with Katie McFarlan is going to be. I'm excited to welcome Katie back to the show. Katie is the founder of Dakota Design Company, an operations consultant agency for you interior designers. I've had many designers reach out to me and tell me how much Katie has helped them transform their business, and I know that she has valuable insights for every one of us. Katie was on the show originally in episode 678 to discuss processes. Today, she is sharing 6 business practices that successful interior designers have in common. So if you're new to the show, I'm happy to introduce you to Katie. And if you're a longtime listener, I know you're already doing your happy dance. Hey, Katie, thanks so much for coming back to A Well-Designed Business today.
Hey, LuAnn, I'm so excited to be here.
Well, you know, it's my great pleasure to have you back, Katie, because I can't tell you the number of designers that have reached out to me to let me know that since the first time you were on the podcast, how, they've hired you, they've worked with you, and I'm going to tell you what, lady, people swear by you.
Oh my gosh, that is really incredible. But I would say, like I said before, it's been really amazing to be able to reach designers I maybe wouldn't have been able to reach otherwise and help them. So I really appreciate that you provide this platform for designers to learn and, know what's possible and what's out there for people.
Well, you know me, if somebody is doing a really good job at something, I know that designers need help in the back end operations of their business. And when somebody is doing a really good job at it, then I want to make sure that the light is shined on you, because it is, look, you work with designers every day, and you know how hard it is to run an interior design firm, and this part of it is the wiggy part, right? It's all the details, and what I'm learning is, it's not rocket science, but most designers that are the CEO of their own firm are also visionaries and a little crazy brained. And so the systems and the processes are tough for a lot of us, right?
Well, it's so much more than just the pretty design. And I know everyone who's on the podcast says that, right? It's like 90% business and then 10% design. And so I think that's like what you see on Instagram and HGTV is all the pretty stuff. And that's really exciting and fun. But then when you actually get into the nitty gritty, you're, for the majority of the project, you're in the middle of it and you're running a business. So there's just so much to it. And I mean, no one is good at everything. Like that's just not possible. So yes, there's absolutely, so many designers who struggle with that. And I think if you're a designer who's struggling with any parts of it, like you are not alone. And I feel like that's something I always tell to my clients when I talk with them, like you're not the first one who has shared this exact same pain point or problem. Like you are not the only one. And they feel really like kind of grateful to know that, so other people struggle with this too. Like I'm not the only one who's, consulting with my husband and my husband's like, seriously, I don't know. I can't answer you anymore. So, there's some solidarity in knowing that a lot of people are struggling with the same thing.
No, I agree with you 100% especially when I'm doing live events and people come up to me and they talk to me, and it's one of two things. It's I am beside myself and I'm feeling like people have said to me, I feel like a failure. I feel like I have the chops to be a designer, but I can't make any money, and I'm exhausted and I'm tired and there's problems all the time. And they're not raising their hand and telling me that. They're coming up to me after, I've given a presentation, and they're like sort of like standing to the side and practically, with tears, welling up because it is so overwhelming. And I'm with you, Katie. I'm like, you are not alone. This is not easy. And, unless you were born with this kind of a brain to do it, which 90% of creatives were not. Right? And so I agree with you. And I'm so grateful that there are companies like yours out there, Dakota Design, that is a real beacon of light. And I'm not joking. Since you were on the show, I really, it's a significant amount of people that have literally emailed me, talked to me in person, DM'd me, whatever, and have expressed like the lifesaver of finding you. So you're doing an amazing job.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you to all the people who have reached out to me to say that. That's really incredible. I feel like, the work that I do, I always feel so honored to do it, because similar to those, the designers who are coming up to you, like in tears, a lot of times our kickoff calls are like crying, and they're saying, this isn't sustainable. I can't do this. What am I doing? And then by the end of the call, they're like, okay, I see a light. Like, I see what I was doing wrong. I see where we can fix it. And you and your team are going to fix those things.
Yes,
right? So it's like, and I don't have to do it and be alone in it. I think that's such a big thing, is just being alone in having a business, right? And it as an entrepreneur, there's always something you could be doing, and you get really deep into your own headspace. And so just to kind of have somebody be like, well, hold on, like, let's just start one thing at a time. First things first. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of how we like to start things. So,
well, and the thing is, I can't tell you the number of times I've said this exact line on the podcast. I'm like, everybody's like, shut up already with it. But like, it's literally like a design project. I'm sure many, many designers have had the kind of conversation with a potential client that's like, I am so overwhelmed. This big house, we bought it, or we're building it, or we're this, or we're that, and I don't know where to start, and it's so much money, and I don't want to make a mistake, and I just don't know what to do first. Do I get the sofa? Do I get the paint? Do I get the flooring? And I don't know what to do. And the designer is like, hey, I got this. I got this. This is what I do, right? And we don't look at that as a designer. You don't look at that homeowner and think, really? Can't you figure it out?
Oh, gosh, no.
Right. And so why do we put it on ourselves as creatives that we should be able to create these beautiful, imaginative, wonderful things, whether it's, design rooms or art or, podcasts or whatever, and think we should understand the back end too. It's like, no, we need the help to do it. We go to the people who that's their area of specialty and their gifts and their superpowers, right?
Yep. You've got to do it. Either you invest the time or the money in learning it, or having people come and help you with it. Right.
That's it. So, it's time or money. Say it all the time. Yep. What are we putting into it? Time or money? Tell me which one. Exactly. I'll tell you how to do it.
Yep, for sure.
So I love it. So today we are going to talk about, in your experience with working with dozens and dozens of interior designers and helping them, transform their company and really into something that is sustainable from an enjoyment point of view, sustainable from a profitable point of view, into something that they like doing. And in all of this experience, you said to me that you noticed 6 areas that are the places that the most successful designers have in common in running their businesses. You're like, if there's 6 things that the ones that are profitable, happy, efficient, all the things are doing, it's these 6 things, right?
Yes. Yeah. So we kind of came up with like the 6 that we thought were like the 6 business practices that our most successful designers have in common. And so I want to start that by, first of all, just saying success could mean anything to anyone, right? So I'm not just talking about my designers who are generating multiple millions of dollars in revenue, who have huge staffs or who have showrooms or, large studio spaces or are published or any of that. It's the designer who has like their success, right? So some of my designers, like they will say in their intake, I want to stay small and I want to make sure I can keep my two girls who work with me. I want to keep them part-time, or I want it just to be me and a virtual assistant, or I just want to have summers off, or I only want to do virtual design, or whatever their version of success is. That's what I'm saying, right? So it doesn't have to just be financial or size. It could be really any metric that is how you define your success.
I love that. I love that, Katie, because it's so true. And it's so funny because I often use the example that we have in Exciting Windows. And at Exciting Windows, the other company that Vin and I run, where we are teaching and coaching and consulting with window treatment businesses on how to be profitable. We have one business in there. I've mentioned her several times, and her name is Susan. And, I think when she joined Exciting Windows several years ago, she was doing under $100,000 a year. And she has grown up to more than, I think, almost $750,000. But she has criteria for it. She wants to work 36 of the 52 weeks of the year. That's it.
Yep.
And she wants to stay solo, but she has, with the guidance and the help of Exciting Windows, learned how to manage a team that is subcontracted, because she doesn't want a payroll. She doesn't want the things. But she got so darn good at window treatments and making customers happy that she kept growing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right?
Right?
There's just so many different things. Like for a lot of people, like I only want to work 30 hours a week, or I only want to work while my kids are in school. I want to, and again, that's where the service structure is going to come in, right? Is like, okay, well, if that's how you define success, then why are you out there doing these full home builds, right? That are not going to fit into like the 9 to 2 window when your kids are in school. And that maybe that doesn't even matter to you to have those big projects. Maybe you'd be better served doing this type of project. So yeah, I think, it is overwhelming because you get on Instagram and you see all these, huge designers and their beautiful projects. And for some designers who are just starting out, like they're so far away from photographing those because of the supply chain issues and all of that. But it feels like, oh, well, I'll never beat them. So I want to start this conversation by just kind of giving some like grace to those designers who are, or maybe newer and feeling like I'll never catch up. Like that takes a long time and a lot of like work and effort, right? And even just getting those projects photographed is not easy. It's not inexpensive. And, just like, it's just one thing at a time, right? It's not going to be the one thing that makes you the big successful designer. It's going to be a million little things that get you there. So I just want to point
also too is it could be the season of your life, right?
Yep.
So you could be in business 5-10 years and now you've just started to have children. And so now when you were a year ago working 40-50 hours a week doing huge projects, but now with 1 or 2 little children, it's okay to scale it back and refine your avatar, your ideal client and the ideal type of project, go in that lane for several years. So, I love that you started with that. It's good advice and it's well needed to hear. So let's talk about these 6 things that the successful firms, regardless of their size and how they define success, what do they do, Katie?
Great. Well, so I guess we can just start one at a time and then jump into it or however it works out. So I think something that I really talk about and, again, even with like the client experience conversation we had last year, a big thing is they set minimums for their projects. And so they do that in a couple different ways. So again, I have a lot of designers who are like, I could never put that on my website, or, oh my gosh, I could never tell someone that's my price. But I'm like, well, if we look back at your numbers, that actually is your price. You actually aren't doing projects under this amount of money, or you actually are only doing full rooms, or you actually only want to do full rooms, or you actually can't design a kitchen for less than X $1,000. So let's just go ahead and say that your project starting budget is $50,000 or whatever that might be. So the one thing we do is these designers who we work with who are really successful is they're very clear on their minimums. And so again, I know you just had this conversation with Nancy G like last week or a couple of weeks back where you guys were talking about bigger projects, but less. And that is such a thing, I would say, across the board. Most of my designers, they want bigger projects, but fewer of them. And so that is going to be the first way to do that, is you set a price minimum. So again, you can set it by your fee amount. So your design fee amount, right? So even for any service provider, like you might say, I'm not going to take a job that's under $1,000 because it doesn't make sense for my team, my drive time. It doesn't make sense for us to have the resources from our company on that project for less than $1,000. So, set your minimum design fee, or so one of these three, right? Set either a minimum design fee, set either a project minimum. So go back through your numbers and look and see, okay, well, a typical bedroom takes me about, however many thousands of dollars to design, like soup to nuts, or a kitchen renovation or a bathroom renovation. Like I would need this budget to actually do a good design and get the client the look they're going for. So look at those numbers and then have that as one of your minimums. Or you could simply say, I have a 1-room minimum, or a 3-room minimum, or a 5-room minimum. Or if you're doing 1 room, it would be a 1 full room, typically is what we see. So set some minimum threshold for people to be coming into your company, so you can easily easily spot the clients and projects that just don't make sense for you financially, or based on your resources to take, right? And so that right there will give you the confidence and the ability to just very quickly screen out people who aren't going to be an ideal fit for your company or your service structure, your pricing model. So again, setting price minimums either with your design fee, your number of rooms, or your project budget.
So I love this concept, Katie. And what I love is, and you went over it quickly, but you're gathering your past data to make a decision on this. And this is why keeping the data on our projects, recording it, doing the autopsy of the project to really see, because I've had situations where I'm working with a designer and they've said, what I love is to do this type of X type of project, and it's my best kind of project, blah, blah, blah. And I get these kinds too, but I don't love doing them. And then when we analyze it, we're like, but you're making a 48% margin on this project, and you're making a 25% across the board on multiple projects like this. So what are we doing here? Like, do you love them that much, that kind of project? To spend the same amount of hours, or just, it's not the same amount of hours, but your hourly time is your hourly time, right? So whether you spend it 10 hours on a room design or 20 hours on a kitchen design, the profitability has to be taken into account. And so it starts with keeping our data, and also from your standpoint of just actually seeing that, I think it sounds crazy to say my project minimum is 50 grand, but let me just go through the last 12 projects I did, and 50 grand was legitimately the minimum size project I did. It's crazy how often people when they don't track their data, collect and track and analyze it, don't actually have a handle on the realities of what their business is. Do you agree?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And this is another one of the points that we'll bring up in a bit, is one of the other things that we see among our most successful designers. But to your point, I think you have the data, the answers are all there, right? They should all be there in your QuickBooks or your Studio Designer or whatever software you use to do your financials. And it's all there. And yes, absolutely looking at it. And it's by doing this, yes, okay, a lot of designers are like, I hate numbers, I hate tech. But this is how you provide your clients with an excellent experience, is you let them know how much it's probably going to cost to work with you. So they aren't coming in being like, wait, I had no idea the kitchen was going to be $125,000, even though the last 12 kitchens you did and the last 12 kitchens you photographed, those were all $125,000. But they thought that they could do it for 50, and you for some reason took the project, right? It's like a disservice to everyone.
Yes.
And it's frustration, challenges, it's that red flag client, but it's not actually a red flag client. It's just miseducation. So it's by knowing these numbers and then sharing them. So again, I know you like the actionable things, share these numbers, whether it's on your website, if you're feeling confident, put it on your contact form as which is your budget, drop down, here's the minimum that we work with. Or in an investment guide that goes out when they first inquire, even if you put it on your website, you can even just, if you're scared, you can say prices beginning at budget's beginning at, right? You can put it there. So doesn't feel so firm, like, oh, people aren't going to reach out to me. I'm telling you, we put this on people's websites and their contact forms in like the hundreds of thousands, and they're booked out. So
Yes.
it's all about all the other things we're going to talk about in this sixth list. But it's like, you have to just put that information out there, because you're providing your clients an educational like data point that, hey, the kitchens you're seeing in our Instagram, those are $75,000 or higher.
Right.
So if you're coming in with a $40,000 budget, I don't know that we're going to be the best designer for you.
Right.
Or we need to level set on expectations. But again, still probably not going to be a good fit, right? So it's just having those data points and then sharing them with your clients is so, so important. And it gives you something to kind of hold firm to as a designer who might feel like, oh, okay, fine, I'll lower my price for you, or I really want this project, right? You just have something to hold firm to. Like, hey, I know the numbers have shown me this is the price to even like start working with our company.
Right.
Even if it's just you, you still have like overhead. Like when I'm working, my kids are in daycare, they're at summer camp, there's 100 things happening for me to be able to work. So you have overhead, and you've got to make sure that that's why you set those minimums.
I love that you pointed that out, because even a designer who's working in his or her home, if you have even something as simple as a little kid, like that's a very expensive day,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
You know,
Yep.
I mean, what it costs to put kids in care now is beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
My
it's
daughter's
insane.
going through it now, and I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah. That's why you should retire, right? So you can help.
Oh, yeah, that's going to happen. Right. We all want to stay happy.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Mom, daughter, and grandchildren. You know, my husband and I, when they come to the beach house almost every weekend, and we can't wait Friday till they get there. It's like, yay! And then Sunday we're like, bye, see ya.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot with little ones. I mean, and I have 3 little ones myself. So
goodness.
It's very intense. And even like before this podcast last night or this morning, I woke up so early from a nightmare that 2 of my kids were in the room with me while we were on the podcast fighting. And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, they have to be out of the house. I can't hear them. They can't be anywhere near me. So,
oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so there's a cost, right? There's a cost to doing business, and whether it's like an actual like monetary cost that you're handing over, or it's like opportunity cost, or it's something that's running in the background of your life and your family for you to be able to work and have dedicated work time, like there's an expense to that. So again, looking at your numbers, and again, like I know we're kind of getting a little off track, but tracking your hours so you can actually see like how long things take you, so it gives you more confidence in setting those minimums, because hey, I know that just a one room design is going to take me about 30 hours or 40 hours because I've done 10 of them, and that's how long it's taken me.
Well, and that's the truth, because if you track it and you actually know that you have tracked it dutifully and you've now documented 4, 5, 6 times, you don't, because normally when we're giving a price that we're not sure if it's a right price and we're going to cave on the price, it's because we really don't know. It's like, oh, 30 hours seems like it would have taken to room. Oh, you don't want to pay that much. Well, I guess I could do it in 20. It's like, well, but if you're looking at your data that says the last 5 you did took 40, you're not going to cave as easily. You know, it's like legitimately, you know, my line, in my experience, this is how long it takes.
Yeah, exactly. So. And if you want to get down to the price of 20 hours, let's look at the scope and see what we can remove, so we can get to that point for you. Right. I mean,
I can
it's
pick your paints and tell you where to move the sofa.
Exactly. Yeah. So I always say, like, start as you mean to go on. And I think, you know, starting your business as the business that you want it to be, and just making sure all those steps that you take are putting you in that, like, on that path is so key. And it's just going to save you so much down the road, right? Because I have a lot of design. And again, yes, you're going to take clients who maybe aren't ideal, because you've got to get your feet wet. You've got to take projects and get experience. But like, if you're like, well, I'll just kind of, you know, I want to be big someday. I want to have a team. I want to hit, you know, $1 million or whatever. But then you're taking any single project and you're letting them contact you however, and pricing is whatever. It's going to be really hard to turn back on that, because they're going to send referrals your way. Oh, Katie was so great. She did whatever we needed. She was available 24/7. She'd come to our house all the time. It's going to be really hard to turn that back.
You're like, please don't refer me.
Yeah, exactly. But so, you know, so just if you're a designer and you're like, I can't set these prices or set these boundaries, like you can and you should.
Yes.
Because again, it's going to be one of the first things, quickest things to get you out of overwhelm is just set those minimums. And then when someone inquires, you just let them know these are the minimums and here's what we do within within our services. So that kind of sets us up nicely for the next one that I have on the list is, another thing that we see, the business practice we see among our successful designers is they create clearly defined services and processes to go with those services, and then they stick to them. And I
sing into the choir, ladies.
I know.
Sing.
I think we talked about this last year when I was on the podcast. We talked about how, that one project, like, okay, fine, I'll just go outside of my process for you and I'll just do this one thing. That will be the thing that, like, the straw that breaks the camel's back. And with some of our designers, we say, like, no good deed goes unpunished. So just stick to the process because we know it works. We know it's efficient. And that's what everything in the company is built around. The pricing, the team, the deliverables, like your resources, all of those things are built to support that process. And so we see, and that's one of the big things we do with our designers when we first start working with them is we look at their services. We say, like, okay, well, what do you like to do? What are you doing? Like, how are you delivering this to your clients? Is it working? Is it not working? And we just tighten it up, right? So it might come from, or it might be a designer who's like, oh, I could do, anything for anyone. It's like, okay, well, let's put some structure around it because you're coming to me, so you're overwhelmed and you're probably feeling like this thing isn't sustainable and I'm going to burn the business down soon if we don't make some changes, right? And so we put some structure around their services of what they will do, what they won't do, what type of, design is included, deliverables are included, what type of support is included, and all of that. And we create that and then we define it, right? Like we talked about last time, we formalize those services and then the phases of those services. So then again, that really helps our designers to come across as being like, hey, this is the process and here's what we can do for you. And it's either going to resonate with you as a customer or it's not. But because I know my process, I also am really confident in my pricing because I know we're going to do all these things for you. So that would be the next thing is I think, really look at your services. And again, we work almost exclusive, like we work with, interior designers and event planners. And when we look at their websites, when we first start, sometimes it's like, here's the list of the 100 things I can do. And I'm like, all right, what do you like to do? Do you like to do all that? Is all of that necessary? Like, and most often they're a full service designer, right? So it's like, okay, that's great. Let's just like capture it and like put it into like this little package, right? And again, it's productizing a service, and that's how it's really easy to, like, I think Sarah Lynn Brennan does that really nicely, where her services are like a package, and it feels so good to just put something in the cart and know what you're getting, right? So when you can package your services and have them very clearly mapped out, your customers can very easily see themselves purchasing that and working with you, and it makes that whole process so much easier. So that would be my second thing. And then again, sticking to them. Like I just did, I think, a post or a newsletter on like red flags to watch out for in clients. And a big one that I've seen, I know a lot of my designers have seen, is their customers push them to move outside of their process. Well, can't you just start earlier? Or can't you just do the design quicker? Or can't you just come to my house now? I know you don't normally do that, but can't you just do that? And like 100% of the time that doesn't end well, because either now the designer's like, well, I don't want to do this. Like this, why did I do this? They're going to get burned. They're going to get, maybe taken advantage of a little bit by the client. Now the client's going to want it again. But now like they're not going to be able to explain, well, this is the only time we did this. And so team member, don't ever offer this.
Right.
Except for this one time, we will do this. And the team's like, well, I don't really know how to do that thing that you said we would do. Like, will you train me on it? Like what are the parameters around it? So it just opens up a can of worms. So, make the process, follow the process, and like make sure your services are clearly mapped out. So again, like even like when Meredith Huck, she had said, like I've said before, you have a process whether you think you do or you don't.
Right.
It's how you kind of go through, point A to, point Z in your process. And so it's just a matter of like taking out a pen and paper and just writing it down. Like, here's what happens in each phase. And so that's, again, is really where we start with a lot of our clients, is we start by determining, okay, what is your service? And then let's formalize that process and like make sure we have all the touch points that go out along with it.
Well, I mean, look, we say it all the time on here. The more clarity you can put around things, the less opportunity there is for, designers to quote unquote complain about their clients pushing them into scope creep, right? I mean, if you
Mm-hmm.
didn't define what you're going to do, how does the client know it's out of the parameters? I
Exactly.
mean, it's illogical. It's like when I work one on one with them, I'm like, what this description is sounds like to you that I know exactly where the line is. Like, how do I
Oh,
know where the line is? You didn't draw
oh
it,
my gosh.
right?
Well, and too, like the design world is very visual, right? So a lot of websites don't have a lot of information on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really tough for a design consumer to come
Yep.
in because there's a gajillion different ways you could do business and serve your clients and structure your services. And like if I have never hired a designer, I wouldn't know what's
Not
normal,
the
right? I
slightest
would,
idea. From half the websites you look at, you wouldn't have the
yeah.
slightest idea of how it works, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And so you can't say like, oh, it's a red flag client if you just didn't tell them. Like, well, no, you can't text me on the weekends. And no, we don't get unlimited revisions. Like, how would they know? So yeah, definitely, with having the clearly defined services and the process and sticking to it, along with that comes that contract, right? So the way that we kind of recommend to our clients is for each of your services, especially because we are really defining, 2 to 3 max different services. And each of those services are likely going to have different deliverables, a different support phase, different, things that are happening. Like, is there actually order management or is the client ordering retail? Are there revisions or is there no revisions? Like, is there project management or none? And so we often recommend for each of their services to have a specific contract that
Mm.
speaks specifically to that process and that service, right? Because if you have a full service design experience that you offer to clients, but then you also have a virtual one where you just buy retail, that is not the same contract. And
Right.
oh my goodness, if you send your full service contract to your virtual design client and they're like, ooh, we get an in-person presentation, like how does that work? Right? Or, oh, she's going to do project management for us. Like, that's amazing. So how does she know people in my state when she's all the way over there? It's very confusing.
Right.
So again, when you have that, it's really easy to just kind of be like, this is what's included in your service. And here it is again in the contract that you're going to sign. So you have multiple opportunities to serve your clients really well and do that by telling them exactly what they can expect when they work with you.
Yeah.
So,
I love it. I just love the clarity around it. We know it is. You said it too in the beginning of the description of this to create clearly defined services and processes and stick to them. You said a line in there that I just want to highlight. You said, because when you do that, your confidence soars. And then you
mhm.
actually are able to go back and do number one, which I'm adding for you, which is set minimums for projects and say it with a straight face and not move off of it. So it's when you really understand what you do, how you do it, the way you do it, and why you do it, which is because you have the experience and the hindsight of seeing the before and after difference of a project that's well run and the one that's not, then everything changes dramatically. Confidence, pricing, all of the things. So, and, magically the clients all become better.
hmm Well, and so do you. You become more efficient at your service.
Right.
So then your profitability goes up, or you identify opportunities where, hey, I don't need to be the one doing this, or I could create some like resource guide that goes out at the presentation phase that's really helpful for them and saves me 30 minutes. Like you can start to really, really elevate that service. And now you have either higher profit margins or you recognize I've been doing this. I did the service 100 times. So I know that I can bump this price up. Because I've seen like, yes, we're getting more efficient, but the clients are also getting more value. So
Mm-hmm.
it's again, just comes right back to that data is when you do the same thing over and over and over again, it's really, really good for getting you to be more efficient, working out any of those kinks. And so going from being able to do anything for everyone and cringing when you're like, oh shoot, well, I didn't tell them I couldn't do that. So I guess I
Mm.
have to do that. Just put it in this beautiful little container and package for your clients. So it's really, really clear. And then guess what? Your clients are going to enjoy working with you so much more because they're going to know, hey, I don't get unlimited revision. So we've got to get back to her. And this is serious. Like we have to look through this together and make our decisions and get them to her by Friday. Like we don't get to just sit around and like think about it and send her a bunch of options. Like this is for real, right? Like it
Exactly.
allows them to just get the most out of working with you. So I'm always going to bring it back to client experience because I think that's just such a foundational like part of the business. So you can just tell me to stop if I ever, if you're ever sick of hearing about it.
I love it. I love it. I'm right there with you on the bandwagon. So it's such a critical piece. And I agree with you that it is one of the differentiators for the successful, well-run firms is that this is not willy-nilly. It is accomplished. It's defined and they do it. So
Yep.
number 3, you have invest in areas, invest in your business. I'm just going to say that. Invest in your business, in your marketing, your website, software, and training and team building. This is what successful firms do.
Yes. So again, we work with designers that kind of span from, 100,000 or just starting to 100,000, a couple 100,000 to multiple million. So we do see it all, and we are able to see, even with our designers who are just starting, the things that are really moving the needle in their business and getting them a lot of traction. And we see the thing that is also doing it for our clients who are generating a lot of revenue. And it's investing in your business, whether that's like we talked about before the show, either that's money or time, investing in your business and doing the work, right? So again, we are in an information overload period, right? Time of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have a lot of designers who come to us and they have invested so much in their business, but they've not put it to practice. So I would say action, right? Take action. So whether it's, investing those dollars or investing your time, like take action on the things that you're learning, invest in your marketing. And this kind of goes into one of my other things that our successful designers do, but, invest in your marketing. So this is going to most likely be financial, right? Because you've got to hire a professional photographer. You've got to do some like headshots, and you've got to kind of keep that up to date. And then also there's going to be time, right? Because when you're first starting out, you're probably not going to be able to hire someone to do your marketing, and you're still figuring out your voice and your clientele as well. So it's best if you do it, I think, in the beginning. But once you get to a certain point where you're like, okay, these are our clients, these are our services, we know who we are as a company, it's a lot easier to bring someone in to handle your marketing. But absolutely investing in marketing your company, because if you're not like marketing your company, no one's just going to be finding you online, right? I mean, you've got to do the marketing.
Yeah. Well, we're always like, that's our mantra. Always be marketing. My partner at
Yes.
Exciting Windows, always be marketing. Always be
Yeah.
marketing. You have
ABM, right?
Yeah.
Like what, ABC or ABM? I mean, they go like marketing and sales, right? They just go hand in hand.
Right.
So I think definitely investing in those like critical foundational pieces of your business, right? Like having a website. Do I think this is necessary for a starting designer? No, but I think it is necessary for a designer who wants to, be successful in their business, because it's the place where people can go to get proof of who you are, right? You're not just churning out ideas from your basement. Like, you're a real designer. You have a portfolio, and you invested in your company. And I see that as a customer, and that means I know you're taking this seriously and you're going to take my project seriously. So we all judge a book by its cover, unfortunately, right? If you look at 3 different sites and one of them's really, really amazing, the other 2 are kind of not so amazing, who are you more likely to work with? Probably the one that's more amazing, because you're just going to feel like this is going to give me a better experience. They care about like that, like they care to put their best foot forward. So I know that's how they're going to act. I mean, hopefully in the service with me. I think the other thing is software. Now, I don't think software needs to be really expensive. I don't think you have to have every software out there, but I think that software is going to make your life easier, and learning it, investing the time in learning the software, or investing in hiring someone from your team to learn the software, it's going to be the thing that gets you out of the weeds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have some designers who are still like manually sending invoices and purchase orders. And I'm like, wait, what? Like the owner. And
I'm not laughing at people are doing it. I'm laughing at the way you said, wait, what?
But I'm like, this is not this is not how you're going to get more design projects when you're in the weeds on ordering, right? If you have a whole house to order, that's like a week of you being away and off the grid. So you can place these orders and you don't make a mistake. And that's something that, and again, it's not easy to find, someone who can do the ordering and understands the interior design industry, because it is so specific. But once you do, like then you can hand that off. And then guess what? You either have that time back in your day to do whatever, or to take on one more project, or to be with your kids, or to exercise, or to, start entertaining the idea of opening a showroom or your next big thing. So definitely investing the time in learning the software, or investing in bringing someone into your company who will run the software for you, so you don't have to. Not on every aspect, like not to be completely hands off, but just the things that you're like, why am I doing this? Right. Like the bookkeeping, or the
Right.
sending the POs,
Data
or
entry and blah, blah,
yeah,
blah.
the stuff that doesn't need to be the creative, and the stuff that they don't like. And it's not the product sales. Yes, they're generating revenue for the company, but you putting those orders in, that
Right.
doesn't make sense.
You
That's
could
not
be
like the
selling
best.
more product instead of,
Exactly.
entering the data about the
E-
products. Yes.
Exactly. And then, yeah, and I think too, just being too busy to train, right? So my clients who we see as the most successful is they take the time to train their team members. They take the time and they do the diligence, right, to bring those people on properly. And they know that it will be an expense initially, but that ultimately it will be an investment in the company. So I think, kind of looking at investment versus expense is really important. Like there are expenses in your business, and those are things like, your like internet subscription, and like, these different subscriptions that you might have, paper, printer, ink, all of those things. But then there's investments, and that's like your team. To me, I think software is an investment in your company. There's, when you hire somebody to do your branding, or you hire someone to do your website, those are investments that they have a return. And it's really important to look at those things when you're looking at investing in your company, and think, okay, yes, if I hire this person to do this thing for me, oh my gosh, that's really scary. But hey, then it frees me up to do this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my rate is 8 times higher than
Right.
whoever I'm going to be hiring. And I can also sell products while I'm billing my hourly rate. So I think definitely just knowing, like, you're going to have, I mean, I could be wrong, but I do think there's some risk that you have to take in having a business. That's part of having a business. I'm not saying go spend $1 million to, like, before you've had any sort of traction. And you can definitely, again, like Meredith said in the podcast that she had with you, she did a lot of bartering. There's such
Yes.
smart ways. And what she did, though, she invested her time.
Right.
So there's an investment and an exchange of something happening for our most successful designers. They're not just like, well, I'm just going to cross my fingers and hope this works. I'm not going to market, and I'm not going to update my website. I'm not going to get software. It's like, well, what are your clients going to think when you're like, I don't do any marketing, I don't do any of these things, but come work with me and trust me to transform your space for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite match up.
It's so true. The website is it's something you really can't argue with, right? It's like it's any shopping experience, and that's what it is. When somebody learns about you from a friend, a relative, from social, they're going to go to your website. And if the friend, the relative, the social all painted one picture of whatever seemed to answer their idea of the type of designer they were looking for, and then they get to the website and it's completely inconsistent because you haven't made the financial investment or the time investment, if you're
Mm-hmm.
handy, in making the website look and feel under your brand the way you present your brand in the other ways. It feels like a bait and switch, and
Yep.
they don't necessarily, I don't know that most people will consciously use those words in their head, but they're just like, never mind, right? It's very important that whatever your brand, your persona is that the website reflects it, because it does. It's a place to start to build that trust, and that's an easy place to lose it before you even had a chance to do it on a one-to-one level.
Well, absolutely. And again, it's a very visual industry, right? People are basing who they hire on what you can like design for them and what your designs look like. And so if they're going to your website and it's like kind of junky and not very user friendly, it's gonna be like, wait, what? Like it kind of starts that client experience off on the wrong foot, where if it was well laid out, and even if it is really simple and you're like, I don't really know what my services are, but I'm just gonna make it really simple, really beautiful, and give them a way to contact me and like learn about like me and see some of my projects, that's great, right? But again, having that, it's a sign of the times. You need to have a website to do business today. Like it's
Right,
like I want to
non-negotiable.
work, Yeah, I want to work with someone who is like up to speed on tech because you know what? People who use tech are more efficient. And guess
Mm-hmm.
what? I benefit from that as the paying consumer because I'm guessing it's probably going to be a quicker turnaround on the project and probably more affordable because
Mm-hmm.
you're utilizing tech and systems and software and your website to kind of help speed things along, right? Rather than me having to be like, hey, call you, can you send me some information? I'm on your website, I want to work with you, and they never call me back, and
Right.
I send a form and they never email me back. It's like, if you just, I mean, again, you can use your website to also automate things and to serve as a resource place, like send potential clients there, hey, here's our process, it's on our website, here's the link. So again, it just helps to serve and free up that designer from, you know, being in the weeds all the time. So I always say, like, there's certain things like you do it once and then you let it serve you forever. And
Mm.
these types of investments are the thing, you know, training your team, you know, setting up your website, getting photography. I mean, I have some clients who are using photography from 10 years ago and it was beautiful and it still is beautiful. And I'm like, you guys need to be doing posts that are like, guess which post or picture in the last 9 was from 10 years ago, because I bet you won't be able to, because we invested in, I mean, they wouldn't say we invested in a high-end photographer, but because it was so well done, it
Mm.
looks like it's current. Do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
it's an investment that you can continue to benefit from for a very long time in your business.
I love it. It's so good. And I'm glad that you mentioned the training aspect of it. And this is one of the hardest hurdles. I will say, as somebody in business a long, long, long time, it is the hardest hurdle because you usually when you're hiring somebody, it's because there's fires happening.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
rarely hire people when we're like, I have everything under control.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
I just not sure if I should go to yoga today or open my emails.
Yep. Yep.
and
Yeah.
so that makes it hard. But I do agree with you that the most successful firms in and out of the industry, window treatment businesses, any business, are the ones that have a defined training process and it
Mm,
gets followed. And I will
yep.
tell you, it is one of the things that even 40 years at Window Works that we're just like, okay, we're gonna do it, okay, don't fall off the track, bring it back in for another day of training. Like it takes a lot of conscious effort to stick to a legitimate, well thought out training program when you are under siege.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's the time that you put the brakes on for maybe 1 to 5 weeks, depending on what you need to train them in, serves you for the 6 week and beyond.
Oh my
So
gosh,
much
yes.
better, right?
Yep. Yeah, well, and it kind of goes back to what I said initially, like start as you mean to go on. So if you start your business and you structure your services and you document what's happening at each of those phases of your service, then it's really not easy, because it is not easy to hire. And I think everyone has probably had a one or two bad hires where you're like, what was I thinking?
Oh yeah.
But you map out your services, you have a clearly defined process, and now when it comes to training, you can kind of see like, oh, well, here's like the 37 parts of the process where I don't need to do it. And I can just go ahead and make some training or some looms or type up what they need to do.
Right.
And it's going to make it so much easier. But if you could do anything for everyone and the price is never the price, it can always be something different.
Mm.
That's really hard to train someone on.
Right.
So at my company, we have 2 services and they're very clearly defined. And I'm not saying it's easy to find people to help with my company because it's very specific what we do, but it's really easy to bring them in for them to understand, here's the things that I need to do, Katie, I don't know how to do these 3 things.
Mm.
Where can I find a resource to learn how to do this? Or I can look at it and say, okay, I need to train you how to do that and it's going to take me this long.
Right.
So again, having that process mapped out for your clearly defined service it will feed into feeling more ready to bring on a team. So maybe, again, because you're doing those services on repeat, you're starting to identify, hey, I don't really enjoy doing this part of the service. So maybe I'm not, the house isn't burning down yet. So maybe I bring someone in and get them to do this part.
Mm-hmm.
They can do this whole first part of the process. Or
Right.
like I have a designer who just brought on a project manager. They're like, I don't like project management. Okay, bring on a project manager. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And it took a while to get to that point, but it was because they'd been doing it and doing it and doing it. And we're able to recognize, okay, here's how we do it. Here's what needs to happen. Obviously, project management is probably the worst example because like anything could happen, but you get what I'm saying is
Yes, of course.
when you do the same thing over and over, it becomes really easy to kind of identify, hey, these are the things that we need to bring someone in for. And if I look at these like 37 steps, I could, prepare training for them, or I can look at that and say, hey, okay, I know the training piece will take me 2 weeks. And then I know they'll be like on their, getting their sea legs for the next 4 weeks. And then we should be in the clear. Right. And if we're not, then either I didn't do a good job training, I need to make more resources, or this is just not a good fit.
Right.
So yeah, definitely, again, investing in your company, whether time or money, is I think critical.
100% agree. And then the other one, like we know this, we've talked about this a dozen times on the show, more than that, that you really do have to figure out a way in the beginning, and then you have to always consciously throughout the career professionally, have your photograph, your projects professionally photographed. I don't know anybody that disputes the value of this in all the interviews I've had.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, this is one of my top things, is to professionally photograph your projects. And I think it is, again, you're asking customers to trust you and to trust your vision and to trust that you're going to have this transformation for their house. But how can they know if they don't have pictures or proof of what you can do? So again, like I even say, like, if you don't have a project yet to finish, like, or to photograph, take a picture, do a brand shoot, right? Have someone come into your office, your home office, or go to a showroom or a furniture floor and get some pictures there. Grab some of your flat lays, grab some fabric samples, grab like some of your renderings or whatever you do in your service, and get pictures of you looking at that, doing those things, right? Because you get to curate those. Like that can actually be your style, right? You can pick the fabrics you would love to pick in the furniture showroom you'd love to, work in. And again, like you have to get approval, make sure that's all good, but do a brand shoot first and foremost and get pictures of you styling shelves, setting up styling a coffee table, doing those little things, working in an office. Like those are some really easy ways, right? But again, it's having that professional photography because you're a professional,
right?
And you're going to attract clients who want to work with a professional, right? And so that just, again, that perpetuates that cycle. Like you got clients who want that professional experience, and then they are, kind of, I don't want to say well behaved, but they also know how to operate in a professional relationship. So then they recommend their friend to you, and then the company grows and grows and grows. So I think if you don't have projects yet, definitely invest in a brand photo shoot. And then once you start doing projects, get them photographed. Like even if it's like, hey, I can only do this one, this isn't even necessarily like my ideal style, but maybe I can get some shots of this bookcase and, just to have something for my portfolio. Or maybe I'm going to style some spaces in my own house and get some pictures for my portfolio. Maybe I'm going to take some pictures of me looking at a computer at the flat lays or at the design presentation or some tear sheets. Like whatever you can do to just get some of your style out there. And again, like we were working on this with another one of our clients, and she loves to travel. So we're like, okay, well, when you're out, like find beautiful travel photos that are more like the texture and the imagery and the feeling, and share that. Like you have an opportunity to curate your marketing so it speaks to your brand and your style. And you might not actually have that once you start designing and doing these projects where you're like, well, it's not really my style, but I've got to photograph it because it is a full room and it was a good budget and, all of that. And I have clients who come to us and they're like, I don't want any of the projects that we currently have. Like these aren't my style, but because I did a couple of them and I photographed them, now those are the only projects we're getting. And like, they don't like light me up, for lack of better terms. And so, again, you really have to, if you're not going to set the vision and the look and the feel for your company, like there's no one else. Like it's you. So again, and honestly, even on like a selfish level, it is so fun to treat your business and to treat yourself to something like that.
Yes.
Where you get to really take a minute, an hour to celebrate and do something that feels really indulgent, but is really going to, again, serve your company for a long time.
Yes, it's a great investment, always, definitely. Yep. And then 5 is establish firm boundaries or delegate client management. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So again, I feel like a lot of what we've already talked about is really kind of helping you to define your services, your process. And within that, then you start to understand like your preferences, right? Of how you like to work, what works well at different phases and all of that. So the designers we work with who are the most successful, I mean, I love it. It's like a hard no. Nope, we don't do that.
That's it.
Nope. We don't do that at this phase. Like that's not included in the service. So I think, again, being really clear on what you do for clients and how you do it. And then also outside of the actual like service container, the ways that you want to operate as a professional, right? Like, what are your communication? Like, how do you want to communicate? How, how many visits do you want to do? How many meetings do you want to do? Like, kind of setting all these boundaries. Like, what services do you want to do? What don't you want to do? And I love meeting these designers and learning about the different services they offer. Some of them are so cool. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing that you do this service like this. Like a lot of them are like, I haven't seen this yet. I haven't seen a designer who does it like this. And it works for them.
Right.
Because because they've set these really clear boundaries and they kind of started with like a life first approach where this is what I need the company to do. Like, this is how I need it to work because I need to have this time off for my kids and I need to be able to have, this day off a week for this or that. And so they design the services so they can honor those, those things first. And so then, you have these boundaries and then they stick to them. So I think essentially it's really understanding like what are your preferences for how you want to work with clients within your service, and then like, in your life, like your hours. I mean, honestly, even just your business hours. Like we're working with a client right now who she's like, well, my hours are 8 to 6. I was like, you're working 8 to 6, 5 days a week? And she's like, well, sometimes I work Saturdays and sometimes I work evenings. I'm like, wait, what? Like, why? Does that work for you? Do you like that? And she's like, no, I don't. I was like, well, what would be better for you? Like you're at an opportunity and you have an opportunity in your company to design it the way you want. So let's just get some structure on those hours.
Yes.
Because you don't need to be working that much. Maybe you do. And if you really do, then we probably should talk about getting you an assistant, bring someone in.
Or we go back and see if your processes and service, are not, if your processes aren't in place, then that's when you are taking 10 times longer to do something, or you're doing and redoing things because you didn't remember you did it, blah, blah, blah. Or to your point, it's time for an assistant, right?
Yep.
So one or the other.
Yeah. So I think, again, being clear on your boundaries and communicating those with your clients, and then also being firm to them for yourself. Because if everything's an exception, and, well, just this one time we'll do the Saturday meeting, and just this one time we'll let them do revisions 6 months after we presented their design, like no one wins. Like you're going to resent it. Your family is going to be like upset. It's going to be really hard to explain that to your team, like, especially if they're like, why are you still working with this client? Like they fell off the face of the earth and now you're going to give them revisions. Like it's just this trickle down effect. So I think having really firm boundaries and sticking to them. And if that's not you, then hire somebody who will be like, well, this is the policy. Oh, you're outside of scope. Would you like to add on? Would you like to add on an addendum, or do you want to just, kind of save that for later? Have someone like that in your office, or have someone like your friend or somebody, your sister, be that person for you to be like, help.
Right. Just,
so someone who's not you, because again, we, especially as women, we want to help. We're people pleasers. We want to help people, and we can somehow jam a gajillion things into a day and then, be like, what did I even do today?
Right.
And we want to do that. And so I think knowing that about yourself, if you're a people pleaser, then set boundaries. And if that means that you need to increase the scope so you are able to do all these extra things for your people, then do that and charge them for it.
Right. But it's okay to increase it. Just make sure that you also change your agreement, your contracts, and your fees to do it.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Well, and that's the other thing too, just kind of a side note, is once you do that, now you, the business owner, are out of scope. So if a client actually does breach their contract, what leg do you have to stand on? If 13 things you already did were like, well, I know that was in the agreement and we didn't follow that, but now I actually am going to press you on this one. Like, again, I'm not an attorney.
I'm sorry. You don't get to do that now, right?
Yeah. Well, and they're just,
or it just becomes a debate with the lawyers if God forbid it gets to be that far, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So again, like if you want to be like, I feel like we have really good boundaries in our company, and I've had designers who tell me, you are such, like, you have inspired me with your boundaries
Mm.
because it's so clear. And you guys are so upfront about it. And like, I want to be like that. So it's like, you
You're a
can,
role
like,
model.
you
You're
just
a
have
role
to
model.
set it. And again, I know when I'm like outside of my boundaries, like if I message a client, because I'm awake at 4:30 in the morning, if I message them, I'm like, if I do this, then not that they're
Yeah.
going to expect me to do it all the time,
But
but
you just said it's okay because I
they
did
might
it. Right.
exactly, they might start to wonder, I know Katie normally messages at 4:30, so why is she not responding? I messaged her last night at 8 o'clock.
Right.
Right, so it again starts to create this like little bit of dissatisfaction for their customers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then for you as the owner, you start to get like a little wobbly, like, well, shoot, I guess I did do that, so now I have to do it again. And
Mm.
so again, establishing firm boundaries, or having someone in your office or on your team who is able to be kind of like the bulldog, and not like mean, but just
No. Matter
reminding
of fact.
customers.
Right?
Yeah.
Matter of fact,
Just
it's funny because I think it was Nancy in her last podcast interview. She said, pretend you're your employee,
oh yeah.
right?
Yep.
Pretend you're your employee and this is your policy and you have to deliver it when
Yep.
you can, or, like, in other words, that you're an employee at a firm,
Yep.
right? And it's like, if your employee, if you said to an employee, this is the boundary, this is the rule, and you're having a conversation with the client, if they came back, your employee came back and was like, well, she really wanted us to that, and she said this, and she said, you'd look at your employee like, what are you doing?
Yeah, no
like,
way.
you don't get to do that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Well,
if you
and
imagine yourself in the same spot, like, no, I don't get to do this either, right?
well, and then when there's that, like, there's no clarity around the boundaries, if you have a team, they're going to waver. They don't know.
Right.
We typically don't do this, but we also did that a few times. So guess what? That comes back on your plate as the owner.
That's
now
right.
You actually are back in the weeds. And so a lot of our clients will say, I have all this team, but I'm constantly overseeing and like fixing mistakes. It's like, well, what are your boundaries? What are your policies? Like, does anything go? So I
Right.
think, again, there's just that trickle down effect, right? Is like, have the firm boundaries, be clear with them, communicate them with your clients, right? So in your contract, in your, investment guide that you send out, in your onboarding materials you send out. And then if you're not going to be the person who can say, hey, revisions are due tomorrow, and we haven't heard a word from you, then recognize that in yourself, and also recognize you're running a business. And in order for you to be profitable, you have to stick to your scope, because your scope was priced based on the deliverables and the timeline. Like, it's all tied together.
Right.
And so if you're
exactly.
not going to be that person, either have a software that will manage that for you, right? Send out your reminders, do all of those things, or have someone who can help you a few hours a week to just do the client management aspect, to be the bulldog, to send the reminders, be like, hey, we haven't received your fee for all your furniture that you approved. We have to requote every single thing, all 75 things. And that goes to our hourly rate.
It's funny because I remember, oh my goodness, it's back in the first year of the podcast. I remember somebody actually saying that they set up a separate email, and a lot of us have the info at or the hello at email, but that email is the email that delivers all the quote unquote rules or the bad news or the no's. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just signed, team at or admin at, you know what I mean? And it's like, I remember it was funny because the person was, I'm that person and I'm also the person. But
like the Wizard of Oz.
Yes,
right?
exactly. And if that makes it easier, then that makes it easier, because the thing is, all we need to do is do the hard thing 1, 2, 3 times. Because once you do the hard thing 1 or 2 or 3 times, you see the beauty of it. You now come over to the side of people like Katie and Sarah Brennan and Sandra Funk and Meredith Huck and all of them, that have seen the other side of the hard thing. And it's like, oh, that was hard to say for about 2 seconds, and then it made the rest of my day, week, month, or project so much better. And once you understand and you feel that transformation, now it's not hard to do that anymore. It becomes the way it's done. And to your point with the successful firms, this being firm in their boundaries comes from that learning curve. It comes from having the courage to say yes or no in all the places that need to be said, and then actually witnessing, whoa, that was so much better because I did that. And then that is the snowball effect that creates the muscle and creates the positive reinforcement for doing it the next time. So I love that. And then your last thing was utilize software to the fullest. So we mentioned that the successful firms have software in place and they invest in it. But I think where you're going to go is you don't just buy the stuff and let it sit there in the computer. You've got to use the things, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So one point, just to wrap up the fifth point that we talked about with the firm boundaries. So again, I know you love like the actionable and like tactical steps. So the way to do this, if you're like, I don't know what my boundaries are. Okay, fine. I work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Like, is that enough? Is look at your process and see where at each phase you have the most like frustration, the most like, I want to fire this client moments, or the most just like pushback, frustrations, challenges from your clients as well as your team, and see what boundary could we put here. And oftentimes that's like usually a timeline boundary, or like a communication boundary, or where's information coming from, right? Put some sort of a boundary on that. And that is going to help you see like, oh, okay, these are the boundaries. And a lot of it, again, it comes to timeline. So something we do a lot in our services, we look at each of the phases and we'll say, okay, well, how long is it taking for you to get from this stage of the process to this stage? And they're like, well, I don't really know. I'm like, well, if you knew, wouldn't that change things? Like, wouldn't that be really nice?
Right.
So we kind of map that out. And some clients, they'll come and say, well, it takes me 1 week to get from phase 1 to phase 2, and then 1 week to this. And I'm like, okay, that's the fastest we've ever seen it in the industry. Like,
Right.
and they're like, oh my gosh, Katie, I'm crying because I'm so overwhelmed because I've been doing it that fast. And I'm like, we don't
need to do it that fast. We don't.
Yeah.
You can take a minute. If it takes you weeks, it can take 2. Just get it done.
As long as you tell them. As long as you tell your clients that that's the timeline, that's the boundary of what they can expect, and that, hey, it's going to be quiet because this is going to be a 6-week process, but we'll reach out to you in about 5 weeks to schedule and confirm your presentation, right? Like, just set those boundaries, because don't shop. Don't shop while we're in design phase,
right?
Because we're doing the shopping for you. So we promise you're going to love what we pick. Just wait, just trust us, right? So setting those boundaries that are based on challenges that you've had and just ways that you want to work, right? And you can always adjust because you're the boss. Right. So jumping into software. Yes, it's exactly what you said. We have a lot of designers who pay for software and don't use it to the fullest. So maybe they're just using it to send invoices, or maybe they're just using it to like book one appointment type or something like that. But then they're not actually like using it to help manage and streamline the business. So I have some clients who are like, I want to stay small. I really want it to just be me and an assistant. Okay, that's fine. But you also want to grow, right? I want to stay small, but I also want to grow. I want to double my numbers or whatever. Okay, that's great and amazing. Well, then we're going to have to do it with software.
Right.
Because if it's just going to be you and just one person, maybe a part-time staff, we have to help get you out of the weeds by using software, right? So, and honestly, like we see it all. We see it all. We have clients who invoice through QuickBooks and don't send purchase orders. They manually like call them in. We have clients who use different invoicing software that's not even for interior designers. And then we have designers who use Studio Designer, who use Mydoma, Design Files, Ivy House Pro, all of those. So we definitely see it all. And what blows my mind the most is when designers aren't invoicing, when they're like presenting in one software, but then invoicing in a separate one, and then manually sending purchase orders.
Whoa.
So I'm like, wait, first of all, let's just talk about double entry and all the mistakes. I'm sure your accountant is just like having a heart attack every night thinking about your books. Like the double entry and the opportunity for error and like miskeying a word or a number, and then maybe undercharging a client sales tax and having to go back to a client to get sales tax. And then so again, we find the biggest is that clients, they're like nervous to jump into the software, and they're like, well, it's working to do it over here for now. It's like, but it won't if you double your volume.
Right.
So
Right.
let's learn it. Like you said earlier, let's learn it while you're slow and while you're just starting. And when you have all that energy because you're younger, you know, let's learn it now. And again, so even like appointment scheduling softwares, like something as easy as that, there's such an opportunity. So if a client's like, I don't want any more software, we'll look at what they kind of have in their stack and we'll say, okay, well, let's then make sure we're really leveraging this one. So again, like if you're using Acuity or Calendly and you're like, that's about as tech as I can get, you can plug in your appointment reminders for all your big appointments that are generally the same. Like your install days. Like you can create like a general install day reminder. Like here's what
Mm,
you can expect. Here's how you can prepare. Here's what we're going to do. And then send a personalized email. All right, we're going to schedule you in for your install on, July 15th. We'll send out a couple automatic reminders and then, I'll send you an email with specific details about your installation a couple days before. So
nice.
again, it can just serve as your assistant and then you just get that into your software. Once you schedule them in for that install date, it's going to send out those reminders. So again, set it up once and let it serve you. You do the same thing for like your presentation day reminder, right? Like if your presentations are always an hour and a half and you're always generally presenting these 6 deliverables and here's how they can prepare and here's what's typical for them to do after, plug that in and then you schedule them once and then they get those reminders. So again, it serves as your assistant. So there's just so many little things that clients can do with software that I always say, like, I don't want to add more software because I know you guys have not just the business software, but also the design specific software that you're
Mm.
using on a daily basis. And it's a lot. But I'd also say when our designers say, I'm not good with tech, I'm like, okay, if you know like chief architect or any of those programs, you are. You
Yes,
are good
right,
with
right, right. You
like
actually
I don't
have the
believe it.
skills to do it. You just need the
Yeah.
little bit of information training, show me once, show me twice. I think I can ride the thing, right?
Just kind of the order of where do I use this software and where does it sync up and all of that. So,
Mhm.
definitely I think using, like a client relationship management software or, a project management software is so, so helpful. But I think for a lot of our designers, they're kind of like, this is the way I've always done it. I've always kind of operated out of, maybe your Microsoft Word programs. And so that's how I do it. But I want to have a team come on. It's like, well, then you can't be running things straight from your desktop unless you want your assistant to be working off your desktop or you want to be emailing back the same version of a file. That's just not a good way to start it up. So like, let's get your stuff into the cloud so that there's a living, breathing document that everyone can work off of. And, just little things like that can feel really overwhelming. But again, just setting your business up kind of as you mean to go on. So start as you mean to go on. So if you know you want to have a team, you don't ever want an office, which means people are going to be working remotely, like set up your stuff so it's all kind of in a software, not like on your hard drive where everybody has to come into the office or you've got to like, you've got 6 versions of the client's proposal going back and forth and now no one knows what the current one is and that was 17 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, and I think again, when you're using your software to the fullest, then you're able to really take advantage of having that accurate data.
Right.
So I'm not an accountant, but we handle operations. And so we really have a hand in kind of every different department. And we see a lot of clients who don't know, right? And like they're just booking everything to like products. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you can't do that. You have to have it broken down a little bit more, right? Because how do we know what's profitable? How do we know what services versus products? Like you want to have data so you can make decisions and see like where you have opportunities in your company. And again, even like as simple as just your website, right? Like having a contact form that collects the right amount of information and asks for referral source. Well, guess what? You get to start to see patterns of where your leads are coming from. And that's data, right? That allows you to automate that part of the process by having that information on your intake form. And then you as the business owner can look and see, hey, we're spending $1,000 a month on marketing and we're marketing on Instagram and all of our good leads are coming from Instagram. That's really
Mm.
cool.
That
And
is good. Yep.
I looked at that in a second by just looking at our last 5 intake forms
Right.
because the information was there. So it just makes things so much easier. And I think, a big part too is identifying the software that makes the most sense for you. And again, that's there's a lot of options out there and not every designer, we don't recommend the same thing to every designer.
Right.
We have our favorites, but I think it definitely depends like where you're at, how you're presenting, what software you're currently using. So I think definitely though, if I had to say like one software to have, it would definitely be product management software for
Mm-hmm.
designers. So that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be the Mydoma, the House Pro Ivy, the Design Files, the Studio Designer, one of those. And then you're also going to need some other ones.
Right,
So,
right.
but
No, it's the truth. I mean, obviously, my Doma Studio has been a sponsor of the podcast since practically the beginning,
yep,
and I 100% stand with them because it's the truth. You need to capture this data, this information, and not flip flop and back and forth in all the different places and be organized. It does take a minute to master it, but to your point, and the whole premise of the podcast is that we both know that successful firms use project management software, period.
yep,
I have
yep.
never worked with a single successful, profitable firm, whether it's a
Mm-mm.
$300,000 firm or a $3 million firm, that does not do every one of the things that you said here, like 201, right?
Yep.
And the ones that are getting there on their way, are making their way through this list, and the ones that are in business 5, 10, 20 years and are struggling mentally, emotionally, financially, they're not hitting 2 out of 3 things on this list. And it's
Yeah, and
so easy to identify when you are, like in your case, in my case, and you're just in the back end of so many businesses. It's like ba bum ba bum ba bum. Okay, check marks, no check marks here. This is the
yeah,
problem, you
yep,
know? And so
yep.
I love it. I love it, Katie. I mean, obviously you're really, really good at what you do. Your company is very good at what you do and supporting interior designers in being efficient on their back end. It's awesome. And you always come here with the best tips and the best advice. I like just appreciate so much that you take the time to do this with us.
Oh, well, I'm so happy to be here. And again, I am all about like taking action. I think if I had to say like one thing overarching is like take action, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make the mistake, move forward, put the proposal out there, do the thing because you're going to learn so much quicker by just doing those little steps, right? Every day, just take action. And so
100%.
I think again, looking at each of these things that we outlined, like when I say successful designer, it doesn't just mean dollars.
Right.
And maybe you're like, well, hey, I made the number I wanted to make this year, so I'm good. But you're like, but I don't use software. Well, then I would bet that it probably didn't feel very good to get to that goal
Right.
number, right?
Right.
Or if you're maybe not marketing or you maybe have like crazy services, you're probably like, I'll never be able to do that again though, because
Right.
that was just the COVID, the benefit of the one side effect of COVID was that crazy demand. So
Right.
again, if you're like feeling that, hey, I did hit my goal, but it was insane and I felt like I was on like the edge of collapse, then I would guess that it's going to be one of these things that maybe you don't quite have solidified in your business.
Right. I agree 100%. Well, thank you so much for all of this advice, help, perspective, hindsight for us, Katie. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, LuAnn. You're so wonderful. Thank you for everything you do for the industry.
In my experience working with designers as well as window treatment professionals, Katie is truly spot on with her 6 successful business practices. So let's recap them. Setting project minimums, having clearly defined service offerings and processes, investing in yourself and your business, using professional photography, having firm boundaries, and using software to its fullest. These are absolutely the things that I see time and time again with the designers who are out there and operating well-designed businesses. One of my biggest takeaways is how interwoven these successful practices are. They all boil down to setting expectations, marketing yourself, and increasing productivity. Those are really the pillars of a thriving business, right? Getting yourself in front of people, refining your business so you can make more money with less time, and cultivating a great client experience. Think about it. There was an underlining theme throughout the conversation with Katie. Data makes decisions easier. Think about it, right? When we think about all the successful principles, and then we think about how do we know what they are and how do we track them, it's our data. When you are collecting data and analyzing it, you know how to make calls in your business. Those project minimums reveal themselves. Your highest value activities reveal themselves. The areas where you need to become more efficient and automate or outsource reveal themselves. Data matters. I always talk about the project autopsy, right? Going back and thinking about what went well and what didn't. A big part of that is looking at the numbers. You can't just skate over the data if you want to be successful. The data shows you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, and where you need to put your focus. If you're struggling in your business and you're not looking at your numbers, your data, this is the first place to start. And I also want to talk about the discussion that Katie and I had around those red flag clients. I have to say, I hear you guys complain in the Facebook groups and in person about clients a lot. I get it. I do. There are people out there that don't align with us, that they don't get our values, they don't see what it is that we offer. And they simply don't sometimes just click with us in our business, right? I get that, right? And those are the people you should not be working with, no question. But I have to say, I think those are rare. They are, right? And if you find yourself having trouble with multiple clients, the problem is probably not with them. It's something you are doing. And if you're not sure about this, go back and listen to the shows that I have done with Sandra Funk, the CEO and principal designer for House of Funk and also the creator of the design standard. I actually cannot tell you which exact episode it was when Sandra and I shared how we were talking at an airport in Atlanta in 2016. And she had her aha moment. We were waiting for our flight. She described to me how several of her existing clients had either like threw her out, like they had an all about fit about her most recent invoice, or they fired her flat out. And I looked at her and I said the same thing to her that I just said to you. I said, I love you, lady, but 1 out of 5, it's them. Like they're crazy pants. But 4 out of 5, it's you, right? So I want to tell you, here's the good news. I can't remember. The bad news is I can't remember which episode that we talked about this. But the good news is it doesn't matter, because you should go back and listen to every single episode that Sandra Funk has been in, because I guess you might say I'm biased because she is and was one of my friends and colleagues long before this podcast was ever born. But her episodes are some of the most remarked on, emailed about, and downloaded to this day. So in the 6 years of the show, if you are new to the show, do yourself a solid. Go back to my website and search every one of our shows and listen to them this week. You will not be sorry. And if you aren't new to the show, it's never a bad thing to go listen to what Sandra has to say about running a design firm. All right? Now, back to my points about this particular episode. If you're experiencing scope creep, you're probably not laying out clear expectations, or more likely, you're not firm enough or clear enough with yourself on what you offer, right? So that's the other big aha. It's the same aha that Sandra had. It's probably not the client, it's you, right? So the thing is, here's the good news. When it's us, we can change it. You get that? Like if you really are listening to this and you're like, oh yeah, I have to own this. That's so amazing, because you have the power to change that. Think about that for a moment. All right. So several of the business practices Katie discussed overlap with setting clear expectations, getting clear on that minimum project fee, getting clear on what you do and don't offer, getting clear on what clients can expect from you, and laying down those boundaries at the beginning. These things make all the difference in the success of your business. And when you do gain the clarity and you understand what you want to offer and how you want to do it and how you want your business to flow with your season of life, you are far less likely to cave and far less likely to take on projects you don't want to do or to accept the scope creep when it comes up, right? Katie pointed out something important, something that I want you to take away from this show. Your client doesn't always know that what they're doing is that quote unquote red flag. Most clients aren't usually out to take advantage of you. But you know what? They don't run an interior design business. They don't know the nuances of what you do. They may never even work with a designer before. So typically, your client isn't actually the red flag. The red flag is, are you not taking control and designing your business the way you want it to be, right? Now, I'm not going to pretend for one hot second that these things are easy. There's a reason why so many of us struggle with them. We need confidence, we need clarity, and we need to know how to communicate more efficiently. It's a learning process. So if you're listening and what I'm saying to you is hitting you in the stomach right now, like a stomach punch, right? It's okay. The discomfort is okay. The learning curve is okay. You just have to be willing to lean into that discomfort. It might be tough the first couple of times, that you do the hard thing or you have the hard conversation. But I really 100% promise you that discomfort will go away, and what you will gain in the process is worth it. You come through it the other side. You come through it the other side stronger, clearer, right? And that's when the shift happens in your business. And that's when all of a sudden everything starts humming. And that's when you realize in hindsight that it was you all along and not them, right? So there's one more nuance to this episode that I want to pick apart. Your success does hinge on your productivity. Katie say it, I say it. The processes make the business. And if you want to get better, do more, or even just free up more of your time so that your business doesn't run you, you have to find ways to hone your processes and increase your productivity. Automation, outsourcing, identifying what's slowing you down and fixing it. These are non-negotiables for a successful business, right? So just like how Katie and I mentioned that every successful business owner uses a project management software. I mean, think about it. Do you really want to waste your own time tracking down projects, to-dos, missing out on money, or creating problems with your clients when things fall through the cracks? Or do you want to do the work now to organize, streamline, and grease the wheels of your business so things run more smoothly? It isn't going to get easier. You're not going to get less busy. You have to be willing to invest time now to buy yourself more time in the future, right? And I can't talk about this whole smoothing out your processes and streamlining your efficiency without taking a moment to thank our show sponsor, My Domo Studio, and to telling you about My Domo Studio. My Domo Studio is your complete designer toolkit. If you want to streamline and increase your productivity, My Domo makes it easy. It helps you organize projects, clients, and processes so you can buy back the time that you need, right? If you're ready to take a page out of the Successful Designer's book, you can get 20% off your first 3 months by going to mydomostudio.com/a-well-designed business. So I have to say, wow, Katie, thank you so much. I totally love our conversations. I think it's amazing the value that you bring. And one more high five to the number of interior designers that have messaged me about their experience in working with you. I'm so thrilled that you are bringing so much value to me and my community. So yay. All right, guys. Thank you tons for listening. Completely appreciate you in all the ways. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of LuAnn Nigara, Inc. If you'd like to know more about me, my books, or LuAnn University, go to LuAnnNigara.com. And if you want to learn more about exciting windows where you can get education and resources to build a better window treatment business, go to excitingwindows.biz. Have an excellent day.